Historically, the government has shared information in bite sizes and PDFs. And now, as data is becoming more prevalent and we put all that raw data out there, we're actually seeing that the community can actually get engaged. What we like to do in our work is focus on looking at any one social issue that we're trying to focus on from multiple angles. And that, we feel, is actually what can drive social innovation when we commingle and collaborate around different data points to try and look at an issue. One of the main issues that activists were raising actually had to do with this issue of data, right? And I'm sure folks in this room are familiar with the conversation that happened around the lack of officer-involved shooting data at the national level. We started to look around the country and we saw several departments starting to do some of this work on their own. So there was Dallas Police Department in December of 2014, 12 years of officer-involved shooting data at a very detailed level. Seattle Police Department was trying to get their arms around body cam data and this notion of transparency and redaction of video. We invited those departments and some that we had early conversations with to the White House, along with technologists, researchers. And so coming out of that, we had commitments from 16 law enforcement agencies and cities. We were able to eventually get up to 22 by the time the president announced this in May 2015, to essentially commit to releasing at least 3 data sets around police-citizen interactions, community engagement, so times when officers are in the community, use of force incidents, complaints against officers. So all of these other data sets that start to speak to that relationship that aren't just about officer-involved shootings. It eventually grew, by the time I left the White House, to 134 law enforcement agencies who had released, at that point, over 200 data sets. Data is only a small piece of the issues between police and communities. But what if we could use data not just as a lens for analysis, but as a lens to drive dialogue and build interactions at the local level? What we really wanted to do was start to build a community of practice and a coalition such that we could start to shift this paradigm, where we get police departments and chiefs that when they hear data come up, they know what that means. They believe that it is part and parcel of being a good police force.
Data can't be decoupled from the leadership function. If we're going to be successful, this is the system that we use to kind of move from just having a conversation about data to helping to design a federal program under the Obama administration, to pumping more than $1 billion into communities to build cradle-to-career systems. Data absent of having a disciplined approach to move from talk to action means you'll probably keep repeating the mistakes of the past. But in addition to being connected to the leadership function, leaders have to have a consciousness about equity and what does that mean to live it out. Can we declare the population we want to be in service of? Can we actually declare a couple of measures of progress? Set the baseline for those measures of progress. Weave in what the evidence tells us will work, as well as our professional judgment. The job of leaders is to set this container so that we can bring people into a room, make collective sense and commitment of the journey we want to be on, and then begin to get people to align their contributions to craft the right mix of solutions. For PolicyLink, the right mix of solutions includes families, programs, policies, and systems. If it's third grade reading, you shouldn't see more nonprofits in the room talking about third grade reading than you see parents. The innovation comes from struggling and failing to move from the baseline. When you set this container and people are coming in the room to tell you what they're struggling with because they're trying to make progress hitting their targets and they're unable to do so, that's a radically different conversation than having data experts come up and tell you about your work.
Data sometimes can be used in ways that actually increase inequality as opposed to provide more equity. How do you balance that?
Data is not neutral. It's collected by someone, it's analyzed by someone. Part of it's just building that capacity for folks to understand what's happening with the data, to be critical of it. Data is really a reflection of the business process, if you will, by which it was collected. When you actually can look at data from that standpoint, you actually start to understand some of the context for the collection. And then what's critical, I think, to making sure that it's applied properly is the civic engagement piece. Putting the data out there so that it can empower Angelenos to hold the city accountable, to get involved in addressing social challenges.
In many cases, data gets put out there and people know just enough about it to be dangerous, but it's out of context. So the best way to help make sure this data is used right is for community to own the narrative and for us to help shape it with them.